wants peace in this house. Get out. Get out.
Today is May 11th, Sunday, year 2025. Today, I decided, since I've had an incredible fascination with this story, that I would delve into a bit of the history and the backstory of the Amityville horror. This story has really intrigued me for a lot of years, and since the inception of the internet and books and documentary series, there's been a wide variety of information that has been made possible. And I remember, probably back in about 2009, 2010, that I really started getting very intrigued with the story, because it's one of these tales that is just really incredible. It's either one of the greatest hoaxes that ever happened in modern American history, or it is one of the most fascinating hauntings that has encapsulated two families, in the late 60s and the early to mid 70s. And, there has been, I believe, 32 movies that have been produced and made. And yes, most of them is for just for profit. The story has gotten way skewed and made to just become a story and entertaining and just a fright night at the movie house. But I would like to go over some of the basic fundamentals of what happened in 1974. So I'm just going to begin with Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. He was born September 26, 1951. Was tried and convicted for the 1974 killings of his father, mother, two brothers, and two sisters in Amityville, New York. He was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years to life. Ronald DeFeo Jr. died in March of 2021. He was 69 years old. And the case, like I said before, has inspired the books and the film versions of the Amityville horror. I'm not an expert at what I'm doing here with any of this. And, but I do like journalism a lot. And I studied a few years of journalism, and I thought about becoming a journalist back in my youth. So I'm going to carry this on as a little bit of a journalistic story here for just a little while, and then I'm going to talk and discuss some of the ideas I've got. So around 6:30 p.m. on November 13th, 1974, DeFeo, who was then 23 years old, entered Harry's Bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, and declared, "You've got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." DeFeo and a small group of people went to the 112 Ocean Avenue address, which was located very near to the bar, and found that DeFeo's parents were dead inside the house. One of the group, DeFeo's friend Joe Yeswit, made an emergency call to the Amityville Police Department, who searched the house and found that 6 members of the family were dead in their beds. The victims were Ronald Jr.'s parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr., 43, and Louis DeFeo, the mother, 43, and his 4 siblings, Dawn, the eldest daughter, Allison, 13, Mark 12, and John, the youngest boy, 9. All of the victims had been shot with a .35 caliber lever-action Marlin 3.36C rifle around 3 a.m. that previous morning. The children had been killed by single shots, while the parents had each received 2 shots. Physical evidence suggests that Louise DeFeo and her daughter Allison were awake at the time of their deaths. According to Suffolk County Police, all the victims were found lying face down in bed. The DeFeo family had occupied 112 Ocean Avenue since purchasing the house in 1965. The 6 victims were later buried in St. Charles Cemetery nearby in Farmingdale. Ronald DeFeo Jr., also known as Butch, was the eldest child of the family and was the lone surviving member. He was taken to the local police department for his own protection after suggesting to police officers at the scene of the crime that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman. So that was one idea. However, an interview at the station exposed serious inconsistencies in the version of events. And the following day, Ronald DeFeo Jr. finally confessed to carrying out the killings himself. Fellini, the alleged hitman, had an alibi, providing that he was out of state at the time of the killings. DeFeo told detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." He admitted that he had taken a bath and redressed, and detailed where he had discarded crucial evidence such as blood-stained clothing, the Marlin rifle itself, the cartridges, before going to work as usual. DeFeo's trial began on October 14, 1975, and his defense lawyer, William Weber, mounted an affirmative defense of insanity, with DeFeo claiming that he had no memory of killing his family. The insanity plea was supported by the psychiatrist for the defense, Daniel Schwartz. The psychiatrist for the prosecution, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that although DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD, he had antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of the crime. The trial's judge, Thomas Stark, declared that DeFeo's crimes were the most heinous murders committed in Suffolk County since its founding. On November 21, 1975, DeFeo was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. And on December 4, 1975, Judge Stark sentenced DeFeo to 6 sentences of 25 years to life. DeFeo was held in the Sullivan Correctional Facility in the town of Fallsburg, New York, until his death in 2021, with all of his appeals and requests to the parole board being denied. The history of the land itself. According to deeds and information compiled by the Amityville Historical Society, the Ocean Avenue property had once been farmland belonging to the Irelands, one of Amityville's most prominent and influential families. On January 14, 1924, Annie Ireland sold the property to John and Catherine Moynihan. The following year, Amityville builder Jesse Purdy constructed the large Dutch colonial that stands there today. While their new home was being built, the Moynihans relocated to the old house down the street. When the house was finished, the family of 6 moved back in and once again enjoyed life by the Amityville Creek. When John and Catherine Moynihan died, their daughter, Eileen Fitzgerald, moved in with her own family. She lived there until October 17th, 1960, when John and Mary Riley bought the house. Because of marital problems, the Rileys divorced and sold the house to the DeFeos on June 28, 1965. The DeFeos lived in the house for more than 9 years until November 13th, 1974. The years of abuse and turmoil from Big Ronnie came to a head. After the DeFeos, the Lutz family moved into the property and then moved out in 28 days. Their stay was so short that they did not even make the first payment on the $80,000 mortgage they had on the house. On August 30th, 1976, the Lutzes returned the house to Columbia Savings and Loan. In September 1977, Jay Anson's best-selling book, The Amityville Horror, was released to the public. A blockbuster movie adaptation followed in 1979.
It's a real thing. Coke is, that's the way it should be. Coca-Cola, what the world wants to see. Oh yeah, it's a real thing. Coca-Cola, that's the way it is. Fill a bottle of Coke and the way it will stay. For the taste of your life, what the world wants today. Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
So now, with that bit of information that has been said, I like to go into a bit of speculation about the story itself, because a lot of it is very deep. Ronald DeFeo Sr., by all accounts, worked for the Brigante Buick dealership in Brooklyn under Michael Brigante Sr.'s leadership. And Ronnie Jr. Butch worked there as well as kind of a gopher, kind of a guy that worked a little bit, ran some errands, did this kind of stuff, picked up cars, that kind of thing. Because I'm in the car business anyway, so I'm kind of familiar with dealerships and body shops and whatnot. So what I have gathered is that the DeFeos had left Brooklyn. Excuse me, it's either Brooklyn or the Bronx, I'm sorry. And kind of lived the city life. And Amityville was what they considered to be the suburbs. It had become one of the most astute little burbs that had grown up from the 50s into the 60s and was kind of like the heavenly place to go when you wanted to get out of New York City, get out of the city life a little bit. So Ronnie DeFeo Sr., by all accounts, was kind of a volatile, kind of hot-headed guy. There were claims that he did, at times, abuse his wife, abuse the kids. He got into arguments and things of that nature, and he was a hothead, okay? It was one of those dysfunctional families, but at the same time being, it's kind of a weird thing, devout Christian kind of situation. They supposedly had a lot of statuettes, Jesus pictures, crosses, things of that nature. So it was kind of a diabolical thing, back and forth, that kind of thing. But what I find very interesting is that, like I said before in the beginning of this, it was either nothing or it was all of it. It was either something or it was nothing at all. I tend to believe that there was something in the house. Now, you got a guy like Ronnie Sr., that's a volatile guy, and he's probably spent most of his parental guidance being rough and degrading and talking rough to the kids. And, for those of you that listen out here, and we've had a lot of people listen across the world, you understand that people that are born in dysfunctional families tend to act out that way in life. They learn from what they know. They learn from how they have been treated by your parents, and it's a rare thing to kind of come out of that. Some people do and become good people, but for the most part, they kind of emulate what they know. So you've got Ronnie Jr. Butch, because they had access to a lot of money. He was kind of a spoiled guy, didn't work very hard. He, teenage years got into trouble, drank, drugs, was kind of a louch of a guy, by what I've listened to and heard. Taking shortcuts to, happy times and, that kind of stuff. So, he's still living at home. He's 23 years old. He admitted in prison that he had done a lot of heroin, which can really screw with you, but his heroin's kind of a downer, that kind of thing. But then he's also said he dabbled in a lot of LSD, which is big-time hallucinogen. So that can affect your mindset. It can open you up. So let's just go hypothetical for a minute and go, what if something dark was in the house? What if something dark did live in the house? And usually, by what I've been educated through over the years, is that a darkness or a dark entity can influence those like alcoholics, like drug people, that are under the influence a lot. Their psyche, their emotionality is weaker. And, so the night of like the 12th of November, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, it was stated that Ronnie Jr. Butch was down in the basement and he was watching this old World War II movie. The rest of the family had gone to bed. He was still up. He had taken something, and then he stated, now here again, he could be under hallucinogens or whatnot. I'm not on always the side of the paranormal, but he stated that a hooded figure came to him in the basement and handed him this weapon. Okay? So that's a documented situation there. And he, for whatever reason, just decided to go supposedly upstairs all through the house and shoot every single member of his family. Now that within itself, shooting anyone or causing murder is a brutal situation. It's terrible, but it's especially heinous and terrible by killing every single member of your family. Wow. And then, he did supposedly have presence of mind to toss the gun into the bay. He went back to Brooklyn. He hid the rest of the bloody clothing. He did go to Brooklyn. He did find a storm drain, and he hid the cartridges and the bloody clothing. The bloody clothing that he was wearing. He had presence of mind to take a shower, a bath, to get cleaned up, and he basically went to work the next day. Odd. So then that evening, he comes 6:30, he goes to the bar and he announces to his buddies, hey, I think the mob has come in and killed or shot his family. They come in, the police come in, and the police actually take him away because he had said the mob Nothing disparaging against Italians, but it was a little connotation that, people kind of knew a little bit about, things get out, people talk. So the police had taken him into custody basically for protection at that time. And then they kept questioning him, and he just didn't have the wherewithal. He didn't have the sense to keep his story straight, and that's why he got basically busted for it. So that is a very odd thing. The other scenario he had brought up before was that he and Dawn, his oldest sister, had come up with a scheme to kill the parents, and for whatever reason, and go escape, go be free, or whatever. That was sort of dismissed. Ronnie said himself, Ronnie Jr., it said that he only committed a murder, which is his sister. There's been speculation back and forth. And I agree, because I've used lever action rifles before. And yes, they are loud. Yes, they're booming, and especially doing it inside of a house where the sound it's going to be so loud. So if you're shooting someone downstairs, the people upstairs on the 2 second floors are going to hear it immediately and wake up. That is one of the strangest things. They did conduct experimentations shooting a rifle of the same caliber, same kind of gun, and it was stated that it was heard for at least up to 4 blocks away. I mean, but here again, you've got different circumstances, night and day, other street sounds, things of the neighborhood, wind, weather conditions. That is extremely strange. Did something influence Ronnie DeFeo Jr., Butch, to commit all these murders? Was there something that was just dark in the house that lurked and lived and attached itself to him and caused him to kill all of his family members? Now that is the big question. Okay. So I'm going to go forward in time a little bit. And if you guys get a chance, there are a couple of documentaries on YouTube that are especially good. Amityville Story, which delves into Danny, which is when the Lutzes moved in December of 1975. It was a bit before Christmas time, and they were moving in. Danny, originally his name's Daniel Edward Quarantino, and he took back his father's name after all of the stuff that had happened. He had a younger brother, which was Chris, and they had a younger sister, which was Melissa, or Missy. And have not seen anything on Missy at all, anywhere out on the internet or social media or anything. The Daniel, my Amityville horror with Daniel Quarantino, or Daniel Lutz. If you really look, okay, here again, I've made movies before, a lot of videos, a lot of movies, and you can sponsor a person to act a certain way. You can direct them to be this and that. But this guy, Danny, I have to admit, he's quite convincing, and I feel bad for him. And I feel bad for Chris. I've never seen anything about Missy, the youngest daughter. And the reason being is the kids from the Lutzes were, wow. They went through a lot of crap. They went through a lot of devastating phenomena. Okay? They just did. I can just, and I've watched, it's called the Origin series about Amityville with Chris Quarantino. And these guys really, both the boys, they really had a hatred for George Lutz. Okay? It was there. It was evident because I've seen them both, and they're years apart in production. And the tone, especially with Danny, the oldest one, he is a guy that just really doesn't take much shit from anybody. And it was a good documentary because he went through a lot of psychological trauma. Because what happened to them was a very dramatic event that basically stuck with them and haunted them for decades of their lives. Between Danny and Chris, they're basically my age, and born around the same time. And especially Danny, he explained that the day that they started unpacking things and they were moving to the 112 Ocean Avenue house, because it's a 3-layer house. It's actually 3 stories above, which is kind of neat. And his initial belief was in the very beginning, like in the first hour or so, hey, I believe I could like it here. I believe that I could really be happy here. And, you hear about the priest coming in. You hear about Father Pecoraro. Kathy had called him and said, could you please come by, bless the house, which was kind of a normal Catholic kind of traditional situation to do. And he came by. The kids were unloading stuff. Kathy and George were unloading things, and Father Ray, that's what they called him, went upstairs, and I did find the video and film of him stating, because there's Hollywood and there's reality, supposed, that he went up to the second floor into what they call the sewing room. He went in and he felt what was known as a slap on his face, and he heard an audible "get out." That's pretty heavy. If that really happened, it's pretty darn heavy. And he basically scurried out of the house, and I don't think he said much of a goodbye, got in his vehicle, and he left. And to where Danny, at the time, was going, hey, Mom, where's Father Ray? I want to show him my room. I want to show him what's going on. And then he said within the first 2 hours of being in the house, that's when he went up into what I think they deemed the playroom. And that's when he walked in there, dropped some boxes of stuff. And that's when he said 400-500 flies had developed themselves around the windows, were buzzing and flying. So, when you're packing, you've got newspapers, rolled up newspapers. So he's smacking these flies and trying to kill a horde of them. And he got a lot of them dead, kind of thing. So he goes down to, the first floor of his mom, Kathy's there. He says, hey, Mom, come up here and I want to show you this. And, he's wanting to be proud that he killed all these flies. And he walks in and there's no flies. And she said, what did you want to show me? What are you talking about? And he said, that's the first day he was in there, that he realized that it was something that instantly confused a 9-year-old kid. Okay? And it was like, there's reality, and then there's something else that is like non-reality, you know. And it confused him. It was odd, you know. So that's what happens when you live in a circumstance where you can't explain everything. So if you look at it from, you know, a child's perspective, which I can do, is that you live in a house, you live in a home, you live somewhere that is stationary, that's supposed to be yours, and you suddenly realize that the place that is supposed to be safe to you, that's supposed to be comforting and house you and keep you safe, isn't all the time. It's a structure, but there are things that live within the structure that are just not of this world. That is not the concept that you gain to understand coming up. So, and I think that's why I'm so fascinated with this story, is because, you know, they did not go into a great amount of detail on what happened inside the house. And I've listened to probably hundreds of hours worth of video and recoursing what did happen and what did not happen. And actually, Chris Quarantino also said that when they first moved in between the hallway of the stairs and the other rooms, that he began to see something like a type of hooded figure or some type of dark figure that was there. Now, for a 7, 8, 9-year-old child, you know, this is really hard to grasp, you know, because people love ghost stories so much, and they love the supernatural a lot, and I think people like to be scared a little bit so they can come back to their own home and go, oh God, thank God that is not me, you know. But I feel bad for those that have had to go through this, because I went through a very similar situation when I was growing up. And I think on the first or second podcast I had, it was the childhood encounters, is that even last year, and I wanted to bring this up briefly, is that last year in the summer of 2024, I went to see a hypnotist. And this lady I went to see wouldn't exactly listen to me, or she wouldn't exactly like cooperate, because and I understand there's different age years that you live inside of yourself. Okay, so there's the 12-year-old me, there's the 10-year-old me, there's the 7-year-old me, you know, that kind of thing. And most of this trauma that I went through was probably around you know, the 5-year-old to, I don't know, it went on for a while, 5 to 8 or 9-year-old me. And she was, and I understand it, you know, but I kept telling her that I'm okay, that I have the emotional fortitude, and I had it then, because you just instantly have to develop it. It's a strange thing. But anyway, this lady got me down, and there's when you go into hypnosis, it's a type of breathing and relaxation and visualization in your mind of going down, down, down into a set of stairs, going down. You're counting the stairs as you go down into, and that sort of worked for me. I had to work with it within my own escape. But finally, I had gotten down into this area, and I kept explaining to this woman, I said, there is something that lives in the darkness in the old cabin I lived in as a child. And I explained to her that I wanted to go back to this darkness, and I really wanted to talk to it. Okay, so I think that scared her more than it scared me, because anyway, I had gotten down into where I was standing alone in this cabin in the darkness with one nightlight on in a corner, and I could see the ambient yellow glow of the light against the shadows of the furniture and the darkness. But in this one particular corner, and I can see it now as I'm talking to you guys, is that I was there with that darkness that lived, I was there in the energy, whatever this thing was, it lived inside this darkness, which is a hard thing to try to convey to an audience. And she kept bothering me vocally. I couldn't quite get there to where I could ascertain a communication of whatnot, but I knew as a child that it was there. I could sense it where other people could not sense it. So perhaps, maybe, and I'm just speculating big time here, is that, let's say something was in the 112 Ocean Avenue home, the 3-story Dutch colonial, and it did influence others like Ronnie DeFeos Jr. And maybe because the kids, Danny, Chris, and Missy, were so young that they hadn't been tainted by the obscurities of the adult world yet. So it was readily easy for them to see things or sense things that were in the house. So the other thing too is that now having 6 murders occur, violent murders occur in the house, did that action itself invoke a gateway open to dark things that may or may not be in the house? And did it escalate when George and Kathy and the kids came in? Because I think I'm going to have to probably make a part 2 for this thing. Maybe not, but George Lutz was a different kind of guy, you know. And I think that he was fairly intelligent. I believe that he was hugely selfish. I believe he was a little bit of a narcissist. And he liked to control things, liked to control people. But he was also kind of what I call a dark hustler, you know. And, you know, when you're hustling things and people and money, you got to be careful. Because, you know, I think that bad things can happen from that. So Danny himself stated that when they all lived in George's old house before they moved to the Amityville home, is that, you know, you can kind of look at a person's bookshelf and kind of see what they're into, okay? Some people like Westerns, some biographies, some history. George Lutz was very, very interested in the occult. And he stated and this goes back a lot of years, he stated on Good Morning America when he was asked what their religious beliefs were, and if they had ever been into any occult situations. They both, Kathy and George, said no. We are kind of a non-denominational Catholic situation, and we had nothing to do with the occult. Well, sorry. That wasn't true. That wasn't true at all. Because the account stating that George was big time into the occult. And what I mean by that is that there's different, different arenas of the occult that you can get into. But anyway, he was big into TM at the time in the early 70s. TM's transmeditation, where basically you go and sit down and you harmonize a type of mantra that you state over and over again. Kind of like you hear these people go, that kind of thing. They both admitted to getting into that. The other thing that Danny himself had stated is that George Lutz, prior to moving into the Amityville horror home, if you want to call it that, it showed off to a couple of his buddies that he could make objects move with his mind. Now, whether this is true or not, it's speculation. That's how I'm going to present it to you guys. This is what I've heard, listened to myself. I wasn't there, so I'm speculating. But I'm not saying that's not possible, okay? Because I have studied a lot of stuff over the years. I do believe that some of that is possible. But even Chris Quarantino indicated that he was heavily into that, and that George and Kathy told the kids, say, you guys don't bug us now for an hour or two because we're going to do our meditation. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? But there are different signs from your I forgot what it's called. I think it's your master yogi is supposed to give you these mantra. They're basically in the mantra when you're doing transcendental meditation is that you are calling out. Okay, you're calling out to a distinct spirit, a spirit guide, this kind of thing. Chris claimed that George was calling upon things that were not recommended in this TM meditation. So he was altering the meditation techniques to call out to something or someone that wasn't on the recommended list, like bring light and sunshine into my heart, or I'm meditating for good health, I'm meditating for good spirit, that kind of thing. And maybe he was calling upon something to give him power. I mean, I don't know, but it's an idea. So if he's calling upon something to give him extra perception powers to be able to move things, objects, control people, maybe. Control people. Now that's something. So the Lutzes arrive in the home, and they are practicing this transcendental meditation in the home. And then all hell breaks loose. And 28 days later, they're fleeing for their lives. So that is one hell of a story. And I've really always been intrigued with that. So, like I said, I might make a second part to this. Because it's that deep, it's interesting. And I might go ahead and do that because there's more, in my opinion, that needs to be talked about. But I think that both the kids indicated that by the time they were leaving, that the last night they were there, that the beds were bouncing up and down, I mean, as high as the damn ceiling. And doors were opening, closing. George himself, you've heard the stories about how he had taken on a different personality. He quit bathing. He was obsessed with the fire. He couldn't stay warm enough. Kathy Lutz herself had this terrible situation one night where she looked at herself in a mirror, and she had aged incredibly, 30 or 40 or 50 years. She looked like an old hag, skin tight, wrinkles, gray hair. But they indicated it took several hours for it to dissipate. George and Kathy did indicate that in the latter part of their stay that they both had levitated off the bed. And, these are incredible things. George would be upstairs, his constant waking up at 3:15 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He's heard marching bands in the living room. He would rush down to find nothing there, that kind of thing. But I think that overall, before I go into George Lutz anymore, is that I do believe that something did occur that was terrible in that house. And the reason I say that is just pure logic, okay? Because you acquire a home, you're lucky enough to get a mortgage for a home that, of course they got a discount because all the murders happened in the house. But they got the home, they got in there, and they were excited to be there. And he had not even made the first freaking house payment on the damn house. And 28 days later, they're out. And they leave and they go to Kathy's mother's house. That's where they stayed. And they abandoned most of the items in the house itself. The food was in the refrigerator, and there was a gingerbread house that Kathy had made for the kids still on the dining room table, that kind of stuff, So something, it's not logical that you're like, and people said, hey, he had financial troubles and he was having difficulty with this. Well, the guy hadn't even made the first damn payment. If you're going to make the payments, even if you're in financial trouble, you're going to make the payments, even if you're late, for a while until the bank and you declare, hey, this is a foreclosure type of situation and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that was it at all. I think that something's absolutely scared the hell out of him. And if you listen to the documentaries about the kids, Danny and Chris, especially Danny, that man is hurt and burnt. And you could just tell. He is a no-nonsense. Yeah, he's a BSer, sure. Is he a little bit of a... Maybe. Okay? But, and I met guys like him before, but I'm just saying that he's been through some crap. I believe it. I believe it, personally. I don't think he's lying. But I think that he and Chris and Missy, I don't hear anything about Missy, the youngest daughter, but I do think that they got hugely mistreated by the Lutz, even his own mom and George, after the fact. And I'll probably go into that a little bit, maybe if I do another episodic thing about this. But anyway, if you guys have any thoughts on the Amityville horror, whether you think it was a hoax or you think it's a real thing, let me know. Just go to the website, jjallenghoststories.com. You can message me. You can call me if you want to. It's 540-487-9307. And let me know what you think, or just email me. It doesn't matter. jjallen1967@gmail.com. Just shoot me a note. I'd like to hear from you guys. So anyway, I just thought I'd do a little essay today on the Amityville, because it really does touch me. And I think I will do a secondary thing, because I haven't even gotten into Hans Holzer, and it's a big story. So anyway, but thank you for always listening. I do appreciate all the listens across the world. So let me know what I can do to do a better job, if you don't mind. And keep listening, and thank you.